Hey guys, welcome back. So on the 8th of October 2021, at the age of 25, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I'm guessing that since you clicked on this video, you already know what ADHD is, but if you don't, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder that is usually diagnosed in childhood. It was not in my case, but basically it means you have trouble paying attention, acting impulsively, or being overly active. So I was diagnosed with combined type ADHD, so that's both inattentive and hyperactive. So I'm going to try and explain to you my ADHD journey. If you have any questions about ADHD, leave them in the comments and I will make an ADHD Q&A. I'm going to start with the timeline. So I started getting suspicious in 2020. I was seeing a lot of content online, a lot of awareness was being raised about ADHD, especially on TikTok, and I really resonated with a lot of things I was seeing online. But it wasn't until I reconnected with an old school friend that I really started thinking this might be something that I have. So my friend had also recently been diagnosed, and he was the only other academically high achiever that I knew with ADHD. I kind of only knew about the stereotypes of ADHD, which is like poor performance at school. So I was like, well, I can't have ADHD because I did well in school. So yeah, after speaking to my friend, I realized that ADHD comes in so many different forms, and I realized that him and I are so similar. We had classes together, we were in the same friendship group at school, and just the ways that we studied and got through it were very, very similar. So yeah, speaking to him was super helpful. So I booked a GP appointment September of 2020, and after speaking to my doctor, she agreed to refer me. So through my TikTok research, I knew of a service called Psychiatry UK Right to Choose, and that's the route I wanted to go because in the UK there are some long waiting lists. So I had to give her some information for that in order for her to refer me there. But because of my ADHD, it took me 4 months to send her the documents that she needed. And it wasn't until my best friend Becky called me one day and was like, have you done this yet? And I said, no. And she said, get your laptop, we're doing it right now. And she helped me do it. So I'm very grateful for all of her support. That final push was really what I needed. Doing things was just so hard. I just was putting it off a lot. So then I was referred in January of 2021, and then I had a very long wait until October 2021, which was when I had my ADHD assessment. Before the assessment, I had an incredibly long document to fill out about everything in my life that is affected by ADHD. And that took me so long to do because sitting down and doing it was hard, but also it was a very emotional thing to have to write about. So I had months and months to do this form, and of course I submitted it the night of the deadline. So when I had my assessment, the doctor was really lovely and friendly. Yeah, to be honest, I thought that being diagnosed, I would be happy because I finally got all the answers. But in the weeks after being diagnosed, I actually felt really sad because I was just reflecting on my whole life and realizing that everything I've struggled with didn't need to be that hard. I felt a bit let down by the system, kind of not being picked up on as a child. And I was also thinking about what could I have achieved if I had the tools and the treatment in place to function like a normal human being. So we discussed treatment plans, and I was immediately put on the waiting list for medication. I was told it would be about a 6-month waiting list before I could get medication, but it only took 4 months, which is amazing. So I actually started the medication yesterday, which is how I am able to finally film this video. Since October, I have wanted to film this video, but here we are, finally got the tools to do it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what life was like having undiagnosed ADHD. And if any of you guys resonate with what I'm saying and have seen similar patterns in your lives, I would really recommend doing more research on ADHD and seeking an assessment. I know it's different in different countries, but I'm going to make a video about my process and the best way to get a diagnosis in the UK. So the main reason I was not diagnosed as a child was because I wasn't the stereotypical ADHD kid. I wasn't disruptive, I never had a detention, but I was incredibly chaotic, unpredictable, and inconsistent. I tried to hide this as much as possible though, so from teachers, from peers, my family to some extent. I could not complete homework on time for the life of me. Even if it was very, very important, I was doing it at break time before the lesson or stood outside the class 5 minutes before the lesson started as we waited for the teacher to come in. This obviously meant that I was never handing in my best work. It was always rushed, but this meant I very quickly had to adapt to working in an extremely stressful and fast pace. This is a skill that I have relied on until now. Other than not being disruptive, I was also a high achiever in school. I always did well. I got 8 A's and 2 B's at GCSE, and I went on to get a first at university. This was not easy though. This was so draining emotionally, physically, suffered at every single piece of work I had to do. But I was very blessed with having the ability to pick up things incredibly quickly. My memory is really, really good. I'm not sure if this is a natural ability or something that I've had to learn or something I've been forced to learn because of my ADHD. For one of my final GCSE history exams, I did not sit down and revise for that exam. I read the course book on the train, which was an hour-long journey. I read it cover to cover, went and sat the exam, got full marks somehow because I had retained all of that information in my short-term memory. But a few weeks later, when my teacher told me I got full marks, I couldn't recall what the exam was about. I was like, oh, that was about the home front. And he was like, no, that was international relations. And I was like, oh, I don't remember anything about that. So to other people, I've always been perceived as quite ditzy and dumb. In the UK, everything is pretty much a memory test. So yeah. However, I did excel at maths, which is not a memory test. I was just brought up in an environment where failing was not an option. At uni, there was not a single exam I sat where I started revising more than 2 days before the exam. I would use adrenaline of deadlines to get the chemicals in my brain that I needed to sit down and focus. I would usually not be able to do anything until 24 hours before the exam, and then I'd suddenly get this rush of adrenaline that was like, you have an exam tomorrow that you haven't studied for, you're going to fail this. And then I would go into panic mode and just non-stop study, and then I would have 1 hour nap in the library like this and go straight to the exam, and afterwards I would just crash for a few days, which didn't really work when I started having back-to-back exams. Yeah, I would be out for a whole week after that because I would just be on pretty much no sleep, and it just makes me think, like, if I had studied properly and gone to the exam being well rested, like what could I have done? It's so frustrating. So during the 24 hours that I gave myself to study, what I would be doing is reading the course content and figuring out what is the most likely to be on the exam, really pinpointing the most important parts, and then creating a cheat sheet. It would be an A4 cheat sheet where I would have all of the key information down that I needed. And then an hour before the exam, I would stare at this piece of paper, find patterns in the layout of the page, keep it in my mind, and then the second the exam started, I would take the spare paper that they give you and recreate this cheat sheet from memory onto the page. And then I essentially had everything that I needed to answer the exam. As soon as the exam was over, if you asked me the next day about this information, gone. Absolutely no idea. This method was far from perfect. There were exams where I couldn't remember everything that I needed to, so not every exam was the best, but it was good enough to get a first overall, so that's all that mattered in my mind. The degree I did was computer science, so it was very logical. We had maths courses, it was programming based. So obviously this method would not have worked for something like history or psychology or English. I would have really struggled with subjects like that required a lot of preparation. I chose a degree that didn't have too many essays. We did have coding projects though that I had to do, and again, these were all done within a very short time frame. I remember people at uni being like, Adele, have you finished this coursework yet? And I'd be like, finished? I haven't started it. And they'd give me this look like, are you insane? It's due next week and we've had 6 months to work on it. And I'm like, okay, now I'm stressed. I'll go do it now. Thanks for the motivation. I had such a difficult time through my education. Emotionally, I did not cope very well. I had depression and an eating disorder when I was a teenager. Everything felt so chaotic around me. As much as I wanted to excel and do my best, it felt impossible. And that led to a lot of negative feelings towards myself. Why can't I just do it? Why can't I be like other people? So this leads me on to my next point, which is ADHD superpowers. So I know I focused a lot so far on the negatives of ADHD, but there are actually so many positive things that come with having ADHD. My friend I went to school with, I was telling you about earlier, recommended me this book, Delivered from Distraction, and this is an amazing book. This book has been amazing at helping me come to terms with my diagnosis and also outlining all the amazing positive things that come with having ADHD. Number one is I am incredibly creative. I have so many different hobbies, which means I've picked up a lot of different skills. I am an out-of-the-box thinker and a great problem solver. The ability to hyper-focus, which I talked about earlier, getting a lot done in a very short amount of time, is a positive. I thrive in high-pressure environments. I was forced to learn how to persevere when things get tough. That is a very good life skill that I have developed. And finally, I am very compassionate, I am very warm-hearted and generous. From October to the beginning of February, I felt like I was stuck in limbo waiting for medication. During that time, I found that focusing became even more difficult because I had realized that I wasn't being lazy, there wasn't anything I could do, this was something wrong in my brain chemically. So that made motivating myself even harder because I just had the mindset of, well, I don't have the ability to do this. I'm waiting for help. I guess I'll just not do anything until I get my medication. So yeah, it has been a struggle the past few months, but I've got my medication now. I'm on day 2. I am very excited to update you guys on how it's going. I've been vlogging the whole process, so keep an eye out for those videos. I hope that some of you guys found this video helpful. If you have any questions about anything I've spoken about today or about ADHD in general, please leave a comment. I will try to reply to as many of them as possible. Remember to subscribe to keep up to date with my videos. I am looking forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Bye.